Spot On is supported by the Boston University Sargent College's Master of Science degree in Nutrition program. Log on to bu.edu to learn more about this fabulous nutrition graduate program. You are listening to Spot On, a health and wellness podcast that breaks through the latest media headlines to provide you with accurate and usable information that is, well, spot on to meet your needs. I am your host, Dr. Joan Salge Blake, a nutrition professor at Boston University and the author of the college textbook called Nutrition and You, which is used in colleges across the United States and abroad. For this episode of Spot On, I need for you to be hydrated, so pour yourself some water here and get yourself hydrated, because we are going to be talking about why Americans, on average, are guzzling 42 gallons of bottled water annually. So let's go to the streets and find out how often people are drinking bottled water.
I don't drink bottled water very much, only ever if it's like the only option. Yeah, I carry a water bottle.
I don't drink bottled water that much because at school I have a water dispenser for my fridge just in my apartment, so that's just really convenient, and I probably use that or a Brita filter.
I drink bottled water mostly when I'm out and there aren't any available water fountains, so I'll go buy a giant bottle from CVS, which, now that I'm thinking about it, is preventable if I carry my own water bottle around.
I rarely drink bottled water unless I forget to take my bottle with me.
I don't use plastic water bottles that much because I have a Brita water bottle with the filter in it. So I can just fill it up with tap water anytime, and it's totally safe and good to use.
I usually never drink bottled water because I just use my reusable water bottle every day.
First of all, I know I can recycle it somewhere, and I can take my bottled water anywhere. I can purchase it anywhere. It's easier for me to get access to it.
But then when I'm at home from school, then I probably go through a bottle a day.
When I do have access to plastic water bottles, they're super easy and convenient.
So again, welcome to Spot On. I'm so excited to talk about this water bottle issue and what's going on with this. So today I have a very special guest. His name is Ryan Felton. He's calling in from Brooklyn, New York, where a majority of my relatives live. And guess what? He's an investigative reporter at Consumer Reports. I feel like I'm on CSI right now. And he just wrote a fabulous, fabulous story about this whole bottled water issue and how much we are consuming in the United States. And this is going to be in the November issue of Consumer Reports, and we're going to put this article up on the Spot On Facebook page. So with that, I want to welcome Ryan. Thank you for calling in.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
That's great. Well, I want to tell you, I loved this article, and as soon as I finished reading it, I just put it down, and from my office at Boston University here, I called you, or I emailed you. I really, what I did is I went on the internet and I found out who you were, really. And, it's so funny how easy that is. And I have your Twitter, I have your email, I have everything, honey. So I was able to get you in lickety-split, which is great. But this was unbelievable, very, very thorough investigative report on bottled water. And I have to tell you that I drink bottled water. I do. Okay? And so, but now, for this episode, I went out and got one of those reusable water bottles, where you wash it and reuse it. Okay, I still have the price tag on. So after this episode, we're going to decide whether I'm taking this bottle, returning it, and get my money back, or I'm keeping it. So it's all on you, Ryan, okay? So we started off the segment saying that Americans are guzzling 42 gallons of bottled water a year. But a statistic that was in your article that was eye-opening is that you said that Americans spend $31 billion a year on bottled water. And that is mind-boggling to me. So the question to you is, why are we spending all this money on bottled water?
Yeah, and that's it's a great stat to point out because it's also just been trending upward for the last 20, 30 years. If you look at the trajectory of sales, it's just a straight line going up.
Right.
Besides like a dip about a decade ago during the recession, it went down slightly, and then it just started climbing again.
Right.
There's a lot of reasons. I think the most obvious one that comes to mind is spurred by some things that we've seen in cities like Flint, Michigan, and in Newark. When there's a crisis, if there's a boiled water notice to longer term issues like in Flint or Newark, that compels people to go out and clear a store of their bottled water supply, and that I think has been for a long time has been one of the driving factors. Is and the industry promotes this, that it's a product that's there in times of emergencies.
Right.
There's also studies that have and research that has looked at consumer behavior, and there's some who use their tap water for cooking and the like, but they drink bottled water because they like the taste of it as opposed to what comes out of their tap.
Right. And that's interesting, Brian, what you said about if there's like an emergency, boil your water in Newark, and the people have to go get water bottles. What happens is that fear stays with them for a while, and so this happens all the time. I've spoken to farmers before when they have a recall like of lettuce, and they are just scratching their heads and they recall the lettuce, and they would say to me, the problem is that fear doesn't go away, and once the recall is over, people won't eat that lettuce now for 6 months. So it's the same type of thing. Is once they get that fear in their heads, and then they can sit and say, well, I don't know that I'm going to have the bottled water. But I did my homework here. I always try to do some homework, and I found a Harris poll that said basically that safety was one of the top 3 reasons why Americans drink bottled water. But should we be worried about tap water?
Well, yeah, and I think that those issues that we've seen in those cities really kind of bear out the reality that there are some concerns, and it's very well established that we have a creaky, old water infrastructure system that's in a constant state of needing more and more repairs. One of the stats that we cite in the story is the EPA gave us an estimate of what the EPA regulates tap water, to be clear, and the FDA regulates bottled water.
Okay.
The EPA gave us an estimate from one of their analysis of how much they need to fix and upkeep the water system. And over a 20-year period, it works out to something like $24 billion a year. Right. So we're spending more on bottled water than what the government says is needed to fix and repair and keep up our water system. Right. And which is notable just in striking just in the own stats itself, but there are obviously concerns.
Right, right. And the EPA is Environmental Protection Agency, right, Ryan?
Right.
Right. Okay.
Right.
And the FDA is the Food and Drug Administration.
Correct.
Okay. So the EPA is supposed to be monitoring our municipal water supply and making sure that everything is safe to drink. And are there checks and balances in place to do that?
Yeah, the EPA, looks to states to do the testing, and monitors the results from there, and the EPA can step in if it thinks the state needs to take action. It's what we saw in Newark recently, for example, when 2 of 3 homes that had filters were found to not be removing lead. The EPA came in and said, you guys need to do something more about this, compelled the city to distribute bottled water. But I think, to go back just to your last question, just to tie it off, the reality, though, is based on the data on safe drinking water, regulated by the EPA. More than 90% of community water systems, which are public water systems that supply drinking water, at least some drinking water, to a vast majority of Americans, more than 90% of those systems are in compliance
Right.
With safe drinking water standards. Now, the flip side of that is, 10% or less aren't, which is, that's not to write that off because that still represents a significant amount of the population. But for the majority of us, we have access to safe drinking water according to the EPA standards.
Right.
And, there's some concerns and criticisms about how strong the EPA's drinking water standards are. But, with lead, for example, is back in the news because the EPA is proposing a new standard for lead in drinking water. But for the most part, they conduct, rigorous assessments to determine what is a safe amount of contaminants in your drinking water that won't harm you.
Right. And so somebody's overseeing this. It's not like, there are checks in there. And, Ryan, I don't know how old you are, but I'm sure you've been many years out of college if you're working for Consumer Reporters, investigative reporter, so you're on top of your game. But, 90% is an A at Boston University. You know what I mean? So, or maybe it's an A minus, Ryan, or whatever. But I'm just saying that's a pretty good, a pretty good mark, to be at least someone we know. It's not like 50% of the municipal water is good. It's got 90. That seems really good. How do we know that number, Ryan? How do we know it's like 90% is okay?
So for the most part, when it comes to those community water systems, and just to kind of explain that really quickly, there's three types of public water systems, and then there are people who use private wells. The EPA doesn't regulate private wells, which represent about, I want to say 13 million. I don't have the number off the top of my head, so actually don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
Then there are three other types of public water systems, but community water systems is the one that covers the vast majority of the population. So when I'm speaking to this, I'm generally speaking to those types of systems.
Right. That's like your town water or your city water, Ryan. Okay. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So those systems are required to supply to consumers every year what's known as a consumer confidence report. And that will, if you get a copy of that, will explain, what contaminants were found in your water, at what level, if there was any violations. It's supposed to clearly explain to you what is in your drinking water and whether it meets safe drinking water standards. And there's been some criticism, of municipalities in the past not providing reports that are easily able to be understood by consumers. And another issue that we found in our survey is that many consumers say that they weren't receiving a copy of their report or weren't aware of it.
Okay.
So, which is an issue because if the EPA wants us to know that we have safe drinking water, the public needs to be properly informed of that.
Right, and it should be short. We don't need a 17-page document, and it should be written in English, not in scientific, technology that nobody understands, and shortened to the point. Are these online? I mean, they must be public documents, right?
Yeah, there is a public repository that the EPA keeps online, but the requirements for that aren't exactly stringent. It's not like, if you're a community water system, you have to upload it to this portal. The law is they have to provide it to their customers. And so generally, though, you should be able to contact your water department if you don't have a copy of it. Some, I know, some will just publish it on their community's website. Some can be found on the EPA's Consumer Confidence Report repository. So, I mean, it's something that should be readily available to you if you are serviced by one of these community water systems.
Right. Okay, so now bottled water, the EPA doesn't get involved with bottled water, right? Is that correct?
They'll let you know basic standards if you live in a community that's an emergency or something like that, but it doesn't regulate the standards.
Okay,
no.
And what is that? That's the FDA's job, right? They're the ones that oversee bottled water. Okay. So,
right, because it's considered a food product.
Oh, okay, because it's in the supermarket on a shelf. Okay, so it's considered a food product.
Packaged.
Packaged. There you go. Packaged. And so, but do they test bottled water, like, spot checks or something?
Yeah, that's a great question. One thing that that was one thing I was really interested in finding out and reporting on this for the past year. There is no typical spot checks that are done. What the FDA does do independently is say a consumer files a complaint about there's algae or something in my bottled water. They may ask that consumer to send in that bottle and then test it and then go get a few others on their own. Or for example, when we tested water earlier this year for arsenic, we found one brand that had excessive levels that exceeded the limit for arsenic in bottled water, and so the FDA went out and tested it to confirm that, and then asked the company to recall the product. So there are instances where they do it, but generally speaking, what the regulations say, and this is pretty consistent for most states. There are some states like New Jersey, for example, that do conduct spot checks of their own every year. But for in most cases, what happens is companies are required to do their own tests through labs, and then when inspectors come to review or inspect their manufacturing facility, the companies are supposed to be able to provide copies of their water quality records going back 2 years.
Right. But then again, that's only if somebody gets a complaint.
Only
to
if
the
they
FDA.
show up.
Yeah, right. Shows up, they have a complaint. So, but on the other flip side of that is, there's a lot of money in bottled water. I was doing some math here. So like if you buy a bottle of water, which is like maybe just say $1.50, which is pretty cheap, because some of them can be much more than that, and say you buy 2 bottles a day, right? So that's $3 a day times 7 days. We're talking about $20 a week times 52 weeks. My goodness gracious, that's a big number. And over the course of the year, I did my math here. We're just shy of about $800. And Ryan, I just want to tell you, this morning in my inbox, I could go to Cancun for less than $800 for 7 days. Now listen, Ryan, 7 days flight, all-inclusive resort. That means food and wine and beer, okay?
Right.
So, like we're talking a lot of money here that is being spent on this bottled water, and it's interesting. So I would imagine from the bottled water people, they don't want anything to go wrong, because all they need in the news is like, X bottled water company has, lead or arsenic in it, and then there goes that. That's a disaster too. So they we're hoping that they, checks and balances and everything, but good to know that it's not really like the EPA municipal water have these reports that are public. Their reports for the bottled water are not public.
Right, and that was one big, piece of the reporting here, was that what I tried to do was assemble as many of these reports as I can. And we contacted, for one thing, you can ask the FDA how many bottled water brands are there in the U.S. They don't know.
Right.
So I tried to assemble a list of what I could identify as active bottlers, and I found something close to like 240 or something along that. And that's very conservative. There's likely several hundred once you get into private labels, grocery stores doing that. I mean, and tracking where those come from, it's hard. The problem, though, is I asked all of these companies for copies of their reports or looked to see if they posted them online, and I was only able to obtain about 55 to 60% of those brands. And so, I mean, you're talking about a significant lack of information about, brands that are actively moving product. And so it's sort of just a... I kind of call it like I've kind of started to just view it as or see it as an honor system of sorts. I mean, the companies are supposed to provide these reports to inspectors upon request. Inspectors aren't looking at bottled water facilities all too often. I mean, the FDA says it's a low priority. That's the way that they describe it, because they say bottled water has long been something in compliance that has maintained good compliance. But it really kind of you're really in many cases, especially with smaller brands, relying on this sort of expectation that it just must be good. But right. We've found in our tests and tests in the past have found that there is contamination.
Right.
It does happen.
Right. That blows me away when you say several hundred brands, and now we have celebrities drinking different kinds of water. We have Jennifer Aniston, which I love, Dwayne Johnson. So it becomes water. Which
one does Jennifer Aniston do?
She does smart water. Well, she used to do.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Okay. See, now I'm telling the investigative reporter something. Okay, Ryan. I thought you knew everything. There you go. There I go. Yes, I'll send you the snapshot from the magazine. So it is, it's in a way that's good, because we know the number one source of added sugar of Americans is sweetened beverages, and we know that added sugar is too much of it in the diet. It can lead to a lot of long-term health issues. So we want them drinking water. So I like the fact that
right.
The celebrities are doing water, but on the flip side, they're making it look sexy and chic and the in thing to do. But then on the flip side, like I want to go to Cancun, you know what I mean? And I don't want, I have to save my pennies. So
right.
And I want to make sure that my tap water is just as good, and so that I can, drink the water like Jennifer does, but still go on vacation.
Are you having trouble sleeping, focusing, or relaxing? If the answer is yes, then the TM Softs White Noise Sleep Sounds podcast has got you covered. This hour-long podcast is made to help you get rid of distractions, reduce stress, relax, and most importantly, get better sleep. You can listen to sounds of nature, white noise, relaxing music, and much, much more. You can check out the TM Softs White Noise Sleep Sounds podcast on Spotify or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast.
I have to tell you something that blew me away in this article. You said, and maybe I'm wrong, I think so because I highlighted, you said over 60% of the water in bottled water is really tap water?
Yeah, a lot of that comes from a nonprofit or advocacy group called Food and Water Watch, and I asked the International Bottled Water Association whether they would contest this figure, or they agree with it, and
wow,
they didn't dispute it. Just to be clear, there are though significant number of cities that provide water basically just at regular cost to companies that turn around and bottle it and then sell it again. And I think one thing that has jumped out at me time and again in looking at these companies is that legally the water has to be demonstrated to be safe, like the source, the tap water source has to be shown to already meet safe drinking water standards when they get it approved by the state to be used for bottled water. So it's not like they're tapping a public water supply that is super contaminated and has long had problems. I mean, they're getting it from cities like Phoenix or Detroit, which already regulates their water supplies heavily because they're providing it to a lot of people.
Okay.
So
Ryan, let me just wrap my head around this one. Okay, so you're saying that our tax dollars that go into EPA to regulate our municipal waters are making sure it's safe. We do that, pay through taxes, and it costs like pennies from our faucet to get water. Bottled water companies are taking the water that the taxpayers pay to keep clean and put it in a bottle, and then they're charging, gazillion times more.
Well, they're still paying the same rates as any other business in town might be paying.
Right.
But yeah, I mean they're purifying tap water, treating it further, and then bottling it for sale. Yeah.
Right, because this survey that was done by Harris Poll, they said safety was one of the issues, but also taste and quality. So I guess that's what they're doing. They're taking the municipal water, if you don't like the taste of it, and maybe filtering it, like you said, to make the taste a little bit better, or not the quality. The quality should be okay, but taste. Every town, has probably a different tasting kind of water. So that's what they're doing. That's really, really interesting. You said something in the article, too, that I just have highlighted here. And you said that in the article, quote, some bottled water manufacturers are worried that the deterioration of the nation's public water infrastructure could hurt their bottom line by jeopardizing the safety of a primary ingredient for their business. So in other words, if our structure, keeping our water safe, the EPA and the municipal drinking water goes down the hill, it's going to affect their business. Because, that's mind-boggling.
Yeah, and that primarily came from Coke and Pepsi in what they've conveyed to investors in the past as a potential risk of their business is that they use municipal water supplies as a main source, and if those systems continue to deteriorate, that presents a significant issue. Others, I think it's Pepsi or Coke, one of them, cites climate change and what that could do as well. But the deterioration of the water system, they're well aware that poses, from their view, poses a threat to their supply.
Wow. So it would cost, just to recap your numbers here, so to fix the community water supply would cost $24 billion annually, and we spend $31 billion on bottled water. So should we just donate? Maybe donate to the EPA?
Well, yeah. There is legislation that's being proposed right now called the Water Act, which would seeks to raise an additional $35 billion a year to funnel into the drinking water system and fix and upkeep it. But, just before I forget, going back to your point about cost, that was another point in our survey that I think is, really a notable takeaway from, we did a nationally representative survey of, 4,000 or more individuals, something about that many. And when it comes to cost, the lower income that your household has, the lower the income, the more you're spending on bottled water. It's just a complete, it's just complete inverse. The people under 15 who earn under $15,000 spend about $15 a month on bottled water, which if you take that over a year-long period, that makes up 1-2% of their gross income, which is it's remarkable. And then as households make more, they're spending less on bottled water, and that's the same goes for trust and in the quality and safety of tap water.
So if you earn more money, you are more aware. It appears maybe more aware that you don't spend your money on bottled water.
Right. For whatever reason, the more households who earn more income seem to trust the safety of tap water more, which just speaks to the just sort of the issues that stem from tap water problems that do affect a large swath of people.
Sure. So maybe after this podcast, maybe people understand the difference that the municipal water is. Someone who's looking at it, and if they want to spend money on bottled water, that's fine, but don't be scared. So this way they can watch their money. What about the plastics? I want to tell you, even though I'm a bottled water person, as of this moment. I'm not sure. At the end, I might have this, awakening. But I recycle, Ryan. I recycle my plastic bottles, and so do a lot of people do that, or is that something that people don't do?
That wasn't something that we got too deep to in the story, but it is, one claim that the industry makes is that the PET plastic bottles. It says that they like to. Many brands will put on there that it's 100. I can't remember it exactly, but they use the word recyclable. That it is recyclable,
right.
which is good to know, but it speaks to your point, the execution. Like, are people doing
right,
that?
Right.
And I mean, I think historically recycling rates aren't nearly as high as people would like that. You would like to see them, but. Yeah, I think that the accumulation of plastic is a strong motivating factor for a lot of people who have stopped drinking bottled water. I visited the town of Concord, which is near you, earlier this year, and spoke to some folks there because in 2013 they were the first town in the United States to ban single-use plastic bottled water. And the person who spearheaded that campaign was an 80-something grandmother who cited plastic bottles as a significant motivating factor for her. I mean, because there's obviously images that are really striking to people of plastic accumulation in the world, and just that it really does underscore the fact that people aren't recycling.
Right.
There isn't as many people recycling as you might assume.
Right. And, it takes a village, though, because in Concord, when they banned it, didn't they then make sure that there were multiple places in town to get tap water and stores and things like that?
That's what I think was a big takeaway on how to, in terms of educating people was, they made a valiant effort in installing new reusable water stations, and making sure that there's a really cute map that they handed out of businesses in town that they say if you go in there and say, do you have some water? Which, you would think that you could go into any business and ask them just to pull up their sink, but, there's obviously some that won't do that. But so what they did was they made sure that this business will give you water if you go in and ask for it.
So they're water-friendly. Water-friendly businesses in Concord. So, I'm going to go. I live close to Concord. I'm going to go check it out this weekend. With the issue about the taste, you had said something in your article that you can get pitcher water filters that, like, if your tap water, you don't like the taste of your tap water, you can put the water in a pitcher and it makes it taste better. How does that work, Ryan?
Yeah, there's a number of filters on the market that can remove some known minerals and such, or things that are in the water that could affect the taste if the water's too hard or something like that. And it could improve the taste. And there's also filters that try to rid the water of additional contaminants that could. I believe one of the ones we reviewed tries to remove extra lead. And there are filters like that on the market, like the ones that they use in Flint and Newark and things like that.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, they remove certain things that they seek to remove certain things that can affect the taste that could be unsatisfying to some people.
Right. So it sounds like the good news is that we have options. So, it sounds like that if you want to have bottled water, you have it. You might want to pay an extra price for it, but you might want to reach out to your favorite bottle brand and ask them what the quality of the water is. Whatever it is, do they test it to get that feel comfortable? I think it's great to know that as a consumer, we can go to our town and get the report and figure out what the quality of our tap water is. And, when you look at the big picture, you can save a heck of a lot of money if you just drink, the tap water and you put in this reusable bottled water and container. So I'm taking the price tag off the bottle I bought. Okay, Ryan, I'm not going to return it. So I am going to start filling up my reusable water bottle. And Ryan, don't call me a year from now because I'll probably be on a flight to Cancun, with the money I saved. I'll send you a postcard. Oh, no, I'll email you.
Okay.
I'll email you then. But
Sure.
anyway, I want to thank you. This article by Ryan Felton is going to be in the November Consumer Reports. It is absolutely fascinating.
It's actually already out.
Oh, it is. Oh, my goodness. It's October. It's already out. Okay. I will get on this, and we're going to put this on the Spot On Facebook page. And, it's funny. In the intro, it said that you've been reporting on bottled water for a past year. I understand it because when you look at this article, which you will look at once it goes up on the Spot On Facebook page, it is extremely thorough. I mean, it's unbelievable. And I can see why it took at least a year for you to get all this data together. It was terrific, and I want to thank you for doing that because I think the more that we become educated about this, we could just make informed consumer choices. That's all. It's whatever you want to do, and this way you decide whether you want bottled water, tap water, but stay hydrated. So, Ryan, I want to thank you for being on Spot On.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening to Spot On. Please subscribe to Spot On your favorite podcast app for new episodes every week. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Joan Salge Blake. And also like our Spot On Facebook page and suggest topics for future episodes. And oh, by the way, could you ask 5 of your friends or family members to download Spot On and subscribe to it? Do I ask a lot from you?